Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is RGB, and you're listening to the I Really Mean It Show podcast, coming to you on a magnificent Friday, December the 1st, 2017, man. We're almost to the end of the year. Can you believe that? Daniel Watson, what's going on, man? Cheryl, how you doing? Billy Ross, good afternoon to you, brother. Like I said, we're getting towards the end of the year. We're in December, if you can believe it. The weather's holding up pretty good. Hope everybody's coming off a fantastic week on last week. If you spend time with family, friends. Miss Marshall, how you doing, lady? What's up, girl? Dominic, my guy. Hey, listen, speaking of Dominic Lawson, again, make sure that y'all are checking out the Startup Life. It's a podcast, one of my favorites. I actually like to refer to it as our Big Brother podcast, so to speak, if I could use that phrase, Dominic. Dominic will let me know if that's okay or not. But I like to refer to it as our Big Brother podcast, the Startup Life, which you can find on all the various channels. Make sure you're checking that out. And speaking of that, I do have to give another shout out to Dominic. I've got if y'all see my new microphone here, I got a great deal on this past week with all the Cyber Monday stuff and yada, yada, yada. Man, I got a fantastic deal on this particular microphone, which hopefully allows me to step my podcast game up from what I had before. I had a great microphone before, but this one here is off the chain, man. So shout out to Dominic for being a great friend and a great contact and being willing to share resources for those of us that are kind of coming along as podcast hosts. So thank you so much, man. With no delay, man, we want to get into today's subject matter. The topic today is fire, take that for data. And I want to talk a little bit about the firing of former Memphis Grizzlies head coach David Fizdale. I've had a chance to meet prior to him even being with the Grizzlies. I had a chance to meet him. Saw him recently at the Mike Conley Bowler Bash a few months ago before the season got started. And so I want to give some thoughts on that. And then I want to extend that. As you know, with this particular podcast, we like to talk about things as it relates to us here locally in Memphis. And so what I want to share with y'all is some best practices around if you do, unfortunately, find yourself in a situation where you are terminated from a job or from a business or a project or whatnot. And then on the other side, best practices on if you happen to be in leadership, if you have to be in management and that kind of thing, and you find yourself in a position where you're having to make the decision on ending the employment for an associate or an employee, some of the best practices for that so that you don't fall into any unfortunate scenarios. So that's today's topic that we're going to get to. But first, I want to thank you all. We had over 1,200 downloads for last week's show, The Culture of Sexual Harassment. And we had really good engagement from you all on Facebook Live, from those on the podcast who listened to it at a later time as a recording. And it wasn't just here in Memphis. That show, I think because of some of the hashtag SEO work that we did, carried kind of beyond Memphis. And I got good feedback on the show. Of course, this show's fairly raw. That I don't do no fancy editing or nothing like that. This show is I one take Tony, this show. So what you see is what you get, baby. But Justin, what's going on, brother? Quentin, what's up, man? So thank y'all for joining in. But thank y'all so much again for that show. You can still listen to it. You can go back on my Facebook page here and listen to it if you want to see the video. Or you can go to iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, all those kind of places, and you can download this particular podcast. So thank you so much for that. So let's jump right in, man. If you want to join in on the conversation, if you happen to be on Facebook Live on my page, Ron Brooks, if you happen to be on there, you can go there, type in the comments, I want to join. And at any point, I'll invite you to come on. It'll split screen. here on the Facebook Live, and you'll be live with me wherever you are. So make sure wherever you are is clean and you're not where someplace you're not supposed to be and all that kind of stuff. So see, I know how y'all think and how y'all operate. So Michael Butler Jr., what's going on this afternoon, man? Thank you for joining in, brother. So on this week, you had the Memphis Grizzlies make a decision on their head coach, who is David Fizdale. David Fizdale joined the Memphis Grizzlies on last season. He took over for Dave Yeager, and they had a so-so year last year. He was a first-year head coach. He had been with the Miami Heat. He's coached in a number of different arenas. I met him actually a long time ago. He's a few years older than me, but I met him some time back when I was playing ball over on the West Coast. He was out there. He had been done playing ball, was getting into coaching and that kind of thing. So not that we had a close relationship or anything like that, but we knew each other in passing and things like that. And when he came to Memphis and I got a chance to see him, we got a chance to quickly kind of chop it up and have some laughs. But if you've been listening to some of the sports shows locally or nationally, you've heard Stephen A. Smith give his commentary as he normally does on this particular situation. So I don't want to rehash so much of the sports side of it, mainly because I know that's been chopped up. And there's, if you listen to, Josh Midget, I know Justice is on here watching. So if you listen to their show and, Justice is giving great commentary on this and Josh has, and other local sports people and sports reporters have, local and national. So I don't want to dive too much into the sports side of, Fizdale's relationship with Marc Gasol and kind of what happened in that previous game where he benched him and, Marc, kind of went on a kind of a mini rant, if you want to call that, for one of the Gasol brothers. And then the next day, Fizz is gone. So I think it goes without question. You could kind of see what was going on with that. I think it's bigger than just his relationship with Marc Gasol, though that was a key contributor. I think, Coach Fizdale being as outspoken as he was, then you're in the midst of a 8-game losing streak. And then you bench a guy that you're paying, $100 million to a year, not a year, but over his contract. And the front office made the decision to go with the player and not the coach. And that's essentially what happened. And that happens a lot in professional sports. What I want to talk about some today along with that is with the things that allegedly led up to Coach Fizdale's firing. It's interesting that the Grizzlies front office, kind of made that choice. But when you talk about management in your company, so for those of you again that have your own company or your own business, and then whether you work for a company or a business, either one, you should really study this particular situation that took place with the Grizzlies, because one of the things that it speaks to is what's going on in the front office. And for those that are at the top of the company and their decision making and what may be coming down the line. Trevor, how you doing? Miss Patterson, good afternoon to you. Glad that you all could join. But it's really concerning when you start looking at with the Grizzlies front office. And we talk about a myriad of subjects on this particular podcast. And, the Grizzlies represent a lot of economic impact to this particular city and, among other things, fiduciary partnership with local nonprofits and tie-ins with schools. And a lot of things kind of flow through the Grizzlies, who've been here now, since 2001, somewhere in there. So you're talking about 16 going on 17 years of the Grizzlies here in Memphis. So this situation speaks to some interesting things that also have come up with their ownership, where Robert Pera is now having to entertain. He's the owner of the Grizzlies, by the way, or the majority owner. He's having to, get into some discussions with minority ownership in terms of whether he's going to buy their shares or whether they might even buy his shares of the Memphis Grizzlies. So there's some things that are kind of up in the air. Of course, there's been people who have called for Chris Wallace's head, in this, who's the general manager of the Grizzlies. But again, all that's kind of the sports story. But when you look at, David Fizdale being fired, leadership is about accountability, among other things. It is about accountability. Leaders make difficult decisions every day. You have to. If you want to be in leadership, you got to be prepared to make tough decisions, and you got to be prepared to support them with your fact and data. So there's your take that for data. You got to be prepared to support that with some kind of rationale on why you make decisions. And then you got to be willing to stand by it. It's not just about having a title. It's not just about having a salary. It's not just about prestige or being out front. It is about your ability when tough times come. And y'all have seen me post on this some this week in the mornings, is your leadership character comes into play when faced with tough times. And when you're faced with tough times or difficult scenarios, or scenarios where you don't have the luxury of doing the research to maybe get all the potential plays and all the information and things like that all in one swoop, that's where you start getting into your leadership character coming out. And the Grizzlies, I think in this situation began to show some poor leadership character. You've got a team that was on an 8-game losing streak, now 9, since they lost the first game with interim coach J.B. Bickerstaff. So they've lost 9 games in a row. And Coach Fizdale, in the game that he benched Marc Gasol, he did that for a reason. Okay? He wanted to send a message to him and to the team that I don't care how much they pay you. I don't care what your status is with the team and, all this kind of thing, or your relationship with the front office. I'm the coach. I'm the leader out there. And there's a certain way that we need to play. And when you're not delivering on that, no matter who that is on that roster, I'm going to go with the guys that are going to go out there, play hard, and execute on the things that we're asking for them to execute on, offensively, defensively, and the sort. And if you go back to that particular game and you actually watch the game, not just the box score, but you watch the game. What up, Jay? What up, Darwin? How y'all doing? Good afternoon. Miss Nolan, what's going on? How you doing? Thank y'all for joining on the podcast. But if you look at, that whole scenario from that game, Mark's kind of, and Mark kind of has that laissez-faire sometimes kind of approach to the game that drives people crazy for a guy that you want to be your top guy, your alpha guy. And so, and that's been well chronicled kind of really throughout his career, but certainly more so now as you've had changeovers with the team, with the roster. So, Coach Fizdale as a leader made a decision. He looked at the play. So he did the eye test on the play. He looks at the statistics, and he makes a leadership call or executive decision that he's been empowered with to have Mark not play in the fourth quarter. Now, if Mark wants to get pissed off, hey, that's part of it. And it's the same for those of us that are in leadership, whether with your own business or with a company. You're going to make calls that aren't going to be popular and that people are not going to like. People are not going to like every call that you make or every decision that you make, good, bad, or ugly. They're not going to like all of it. And so you have to be prepared to be willing to take that heat. If you're not, if you want to make yes man kind of decisions and you want to make decisions that are going to be safe, that no one's going to bother you about, and yada, 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 then you don't really need to be in leadership. You may find yourself not necessarily cut out to be a leader. You may want to be a boss. You may watch a lot of rappers and stuff like that. And now you want to be or call yourself a boss, but you're not prepared to lead. You might be prepared to be a boss, but you're not prepared to lead. I'll get into that on another day, another subject, but and don't y'all steal that now. Well, you can. If you do, I'm going to do mine anyway. So if you look at the leadership call that Coach Fizdale made, in my opinion, it was a good call. It sends a message to the team that I'm in leadership and there's a certain way you need to perform. And if the best player on the team or the 15th guy off the bench wants to get upset, we can have a conversation about it. And I can explain with the fact and data of why I made this decision, right? And you can like it or not like it, right? But for it to then progress to where now you fire the leader because, and mostly because the star player gets upset. And again, we know the game. We know how that game works in NBA, NFL, professional sports. But to me, that's not right. And that's where you start looking at some of the instability within the Grizzlies front office. And it's something for those of you that are in business to watch out for. And, whether you're kind of starting up now and you're going to be building your business here over the long term as a business owner, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're starting your business and now by definition, you're going to at some point exit that business and go start another. So you're a problem solver, you're a risk taker, or you're a combination of those two. Make sure, we talked some about culture these last few shows. Your leadership culture should be about progressing towards success. And when you start making decisions and you put people in leadership positions and you don't empower them and you're not supportive of their decisions, you may not like all of them and you may want to coach and develop towards the decision-making process, particularly if you're working with someone and you're needing to help groom their critical thinking skills, which is a big part of leadership, is the critical thinking. Carlin, what's going on? Denton, what's going on? How y'all doing? Good afternoon to you. But that's part of it. You're grooming that critical thinking skill. So that's what you would think that, a Chris Wallace or going above when you're working with the coach. But they don't have that. They have this, hierarchical thing going where a player now, and you've seen this, particularly in the NBA, where there's several examples of, players who have or allegedly have contributed to the downfall or the termination of a head coach. And some of that was warranted, some of that was low down and whatnot. But in this particular scenario, David Fizdale deserved a little bit more of a chance. He had been there just a year and a handful of games going into this year. And so it's not quite right, or it doesn't really make a lot of sense that you're going to fire him at this point. Understanding the losing streak and things like that, which you were kind of heading towards, given you've got a bunch of new players. Most of them are on some kind of minute restriction because they're coming off an injury and things like that. So they're all brand new. You get rid of the whole grit and grind with Tony and, Vince and Zach and all these guys are no longer there. So you could expect that, on top of that, with Mike Conley being out. So I'm not trying to turn this into a sports show, but I want to really help us with the best practices on being able to be supportive of leadership and being able to make the right call in leadership, and then be able to support and stand by your call. Even if it goes totally left, right? Make sure that you can stand by your decisions and then support them. And that helps you groom, again, your leadership. And Coach Fizdale did not get that chance to learn from whatever came from this, because he was then terminated, man. So, again, it's about leadership. And when you have your company, make sure you're grooming that culture of leadership. If your business is at a point that now you have sales managers and now you have, people, team leads and things like that, make sure that, you're empowering them, let them be able to make decisions and support it, and then coach and develop them from there. Everything is not you're going to go and just terminate the guy, particularly when he's holding someone accountable, which he was. And yes, you can understand that there's hierarchy between the 15th man on the Grizzlies bench and then Marc Gasol. different profiles, different salaries or whatnot. But from a coach standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, it should be such that I'm going to hold Mark to even a higher standard than I am the guy that I don't even play, right? Mark gets he's got the salary contract. Unfortunately, it's such that everybody knows what he makes and all that kind of thing. And then you look at his play, and sometimes that don't always equate. So you're looking at performance, the same that you do in your business when you're assessing performance and you're having one-on-ones with your teammates and doing different things. Frat, Lenoris, what's going on? Coach Staples, I know he knows about leadership. Ann Yates, how you doing, lady? Zane, what's going on, brother? Xavier, how you doing? Virginia, good afternoon to you. But and for those that are listening on the podcast, these are great people that are joining in, watching the video cast, I guess you would say, here on my Facebook Live page. So definitely appreciative of that. But when you have your business, you have your organization, and you put people in leadership position, support them, give them the tools and the support to be successful, and then coach, develop, and counsel them from there as they make decisions as it relates to what you've empowered them to do. And so, again, that did not happen with Coach Fizdale. Certainly wish him the best going forward. And then we'll see where the Grizzlies organization goes from here. So the next part of this is I want to talk on two things with you all is one, if you happen to find yourself, this is kind of you're getting towards the end of the year. There's some hiring that goes on, but some people decide not to make a whole lot of moves right this time of the year. They kind of want to wait till the first of the year and whatnot. But you may find yourself in a situation, and maybe a lot of you have. And if you want to join in, comment, hashtag I want to join, and I'd love to have you come on and share whatever it is that you want to share as it relates to these topics. But in terms of being terminated or fired, one of the things that you want to look at in terms of let's just say it happens to be yourself. So many people have experienced being terminated, whether it was their fault, whether they were laid off, whether their position was discontinued or taken away. There's some low down things that sometimes tends to happen. I've heard all kinds of horror stories of people that have to train their replacement and all that kind of thing, crazy things that companies do. That's really just flat foot low down, man. So I know some of y'all been through some of that. Being terminated, and let me say this, the entrepreneurship movement, where entrepreneurship became the big sexy buzzword, most cases, if you ask people, it's usually related to this. I mean, how many times have you heard people, they didn't get into entrepreneurship because they went to school for it, or they had always this natural affinity for it. They may have had that a little bit, but usually what triggered it is some kind of pain, right? Some kind of pain point. And that pain point usually came from they were working a job, blah, blah, blah. They got terminated or they didn't get compensated what they thought they should. And so they said, F it, and I'm going to go start my own, right? Either they had no choice, or they didn't feel like they had a choice, or they were so perturbed by the scenario that's what they decided to do. So whatever that is, whatever. But if you happen to find yourself being terminated, now again, if you go on people's job and you violate policy and that kind of thing, and you've been coached and counseled with that, provided the tools and whatnot, it tends to happen. Okay, happens to the best of people. So, one, you take it into the perspective. Don't feel like you have to be, just so accepting of it, and, give yourself a chance to be upset and disappointed and things like that. But be prepared to rebound. Life's going to keep going on. So, don't host a pity party and send Facebook invites to your pity party, because I ain't coming. Most of y'all not coming to other folks' pity party about that. But make sure also that it's righteous in the way that it's done in terms of the process. You may not like the result, but make sure it's done in a righteous manner. And if it's not, just like I've talked about with anything in leadership, document. So if you're being let go, you may feel like it's okay. You may be concerned about, how it's being done or the reasons or that kind of thing. Make sure that you document the interaction. So if you ever had to revisit it in the future for any kind of reason, you would have that, in place. But, you got to be prepared to rebound. Like Coach Fizdale, he's got to be at some point prepared to rebound. He can't sit and gloat and feel sorry for himself, which, knowing him and having been around him, that's not what he's doing. He's got to go back and reassess and things like that. But, it's, if you find yourself where you've been terminated, from an employer, you've been terminated, maybe you recently were, maybe you were earlier this year, or maybe this time last year, whatever it is, make sure that you document that and go back, reassess, see where maybe you made a mistake or there's something within your approach that may have resulted to it. It may have been the culture of the company, right? Or whatever it is, go back, reassess, and then be prepared to get back out there. And when you get back out there, make sure that you're very pointed and intentional when you get back out there. Know what you want to do. Here's what's get me when this happens with people, and it's counterintuitive to most people because most people want to. It's a couple things. One, people tend to think that they can go to a hiring manager and they're just going to say, "You can start on Monday," right? Now y'all know that don't happen, right? There's a protocol and there's a process. You got to apply and got everything that you got to go through. All right, so yeah, get that out your mind. It ain't 1992 no more, right? Folk got to go through the process and the protocol in most industries and in most positions. The other part of that is that when I talk about being intentional, y'all got to stop. People got to stop this. When they're out looking for things or whatnot, they say, "Well, I'll just take anything. Yeah, I just want to get something because either I want to get away from here or I need to be able to do this. So I'll just, whatever you got, I'll accept." No, you won't. No, you won't. And matter of fact, that's not going to help, you progress through your career. It's the same just like in business. Well, I'm just going to start up any business, that I see. If I see somebody being successful in something, I'm going to go start it up. But no, if you don't have the skill set, the drive, the passion, the expertise, things like that, then no, you don't need to be getting into business in something just because you think it's the sexy thing or you just want to do something to say that you're in business. And a lot of people do that. They get into things that don't match their skill set. They take this hustler mentality from the streets and, they always think hustle. Y'all got to stop listening to all these rappers too, man. They mess some of y'all up. Yeah, because everybody think they got to be a hustler and a boss and all this kind of thing. Hey, listen, be intentional and know what you want and go for that. So, for example, if your background is in sales, right, you're not trying to go nowhere and be no back office operations person just to get something. Because if you got a sales drive in you and you enjoy the conversation and you enjoy fulfilling needs for a customer or a client or a prospect, you're not going to want to go and, be in operations where you're in the back office, you're not dealing with as many people, and you don't get a chance to sell. You're more in audit and compliance and all those kind of things. That's not your skill set. That's not where you fit. You know you're a salesperson, so there's no need in getting into that. That'd be like David Fizdale all of a sudden saying, "You know what? I got fired from the Grizzlies. I'll take anything." And he just goes somewhere to just make copies for some coach somewhere. And all he wants to do is look at video and make copies. Like, no, he's not trying to just accept anything. The man was the head coach of one of 32 NBA teams. All right. It ain't like there's a whole lot of them jobs just out there, but he ain't trying to just go do anything. You know what I mean? Now if he had left and there had been some controversy and his reputation was damaged, that'd be something different. But y'all got to be intentional with what it is that you want to do. If you know that you want to do something specific, let that be known. It don't matter if the position's open or not. Some of y'all just look at what's open and you think you want to try to put a square peg in a round hole. And it don't work that way. And it's harder for people to help you when you just say you want to do anything. Because it's like, it's hard for me to make time for people that just want to do anything. Tell me what you want to do, right? And what you want to be. And then we can help get you there. And you're going to have some flexibility. And you're going to have to put the work in. You got to put the grind work in. But get away from, and teach your children this as they come up and whatever they decide to do. They decide to work, they decide to start a business, they decide to do both, whatever that is. Teach them to be intentional and to go for what it is that they truly want, which means you got to spend time to know that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people know everything about everything except for what they want to do. They can tell you everything Kanye want to do. They can tell you everything Beyonce did, doing now, gonna do. They know everything about these celebrities, right? From what they read, and they're on YouTube all day, and they're liking every one of their Instagram pics, and all this kind of stuff. So they follow these people all day long, and they have no idea what they want to do. And to me, that's a crime. That's a crime. You should know what it is. What do you want to be? What would you enjoy doing? You got to know that. And then once you know that, then what you've got to do is you've got to come back and you've got to say, okay, RGB, here's what I want to do. Let me, work towards that. How do I work towards that? Right? How can I become that? And that's not easy. It's not easy at all, but you've got to be able to do that. Tamika, what's going on? Y'all make sure, about a month ago or so, I was at Makita's Cookies, just on the side thing here. I was at Makita's Cookies. Y'all make sure you check that out over on Airways and then over on South 2nd, I believe. Makita's Cookies. Make sure y'all are doing that. Tamika said, true. I'm sales and I hated warehouse jobs. I know you did, girl. Because if anybody's selling anything around here, it's Tamika. Now, Tamika, Tamika don't really sell. See, what Tamika do, if I can talk about Tamika a little bit, Tamika presents the value and lets you make a decision. Even with them cookies. When you walk into Makita's Cookies, Tamika ain't shoving cookies down your throat. Makita, Tamika's going to ask you about what you're in for. What is it that you're looking for? Have you been here before or not? Here's what we have to offer. How much or how little are you looking for? So, see, Tamika, she's not out here, she's not doing this, and I hate to say this, but it's kind of true, this used car salesman kind of pitch all the time. Yeah, not to be against used car salesmen, but, or women, but. So, that's the thing. So she knows, like in her comment right there, thank you for that, T, that, she enjoys sales. She enjoys working with the public. She enjoys fulfilling needs, having that kind of needs-based conversation with people, even within her business. That's what helps it be successful. It's not just baking cookies and sitting them out there, right? You've got to be able to, there's a whole business model that goes with that family's been doing, like I said, for nearly 20 years, right? So you got to look at that within yourself or within your business. Make sure that what you doing and what you want to do fits your skill set, right? You won't be excited about doing something that's not what you do. You won't have the passion. You'll do it as long as it's the sexy thing to do, as long as you may see some success with it. But the moment you hit any adversity, you jumping out of that plane, right? You'll jump out of that plane. And so you got to have the passion around it, but stop this, calling people around and just trying to get on with anything, because you're allowing the pressure of paying bills. You're allowing the pressure of someone at the house whining and fussing and all of this. And, you're allowing the pressure to then make you act in desperation. And you know how that is if you get too much into desperation. Yeah, that's a dangerous place to be when you're desperate. You're right. So you got to fight that. And what I'm saying ain't easy at all. Right. So I'm not saying this because it's so easy. Right. But you got to train your mind. So be thinking about it now. Hard times go come. right? You know that. Either you in them right now, you coming out of them, or you heading into them. It's one of them things. So at some point, you're going to hit that down cycle. So begin training your mind. If you're not going through it now, or maybe you're just coming out of it, you know it's coming again, right? If you're in it right now, it's going to be over with at some point, and then you're going to get back up. As long as you stay in the game, of course. But as we relate this back, Coach Fizdale has to then go and, know what it is intentionally. So if he wants to be a head coach again, right, then that's what he needs to go for. Nobody needs to call him and just put me on the staff. I'll do whatever. I'll mop the floor. I'll lick the toilet. I'll do whatever. Like, hell no. If he wants to be a head coach again, that's what he needs to go for. And that's what he needs to tell people. I want to be a head coach again. And when another opportunity comes, I'm going to prepare myself to interview, to put myself in a position to get an offer on one of those jobs. Cousin Shaq, what's going on, girl? Shaquana, how you doing? Angie, how you doing? Good afternoon. Thank y'all for joining in. So those are the things. So with that, you got to be intentional. Last thing is with your business. Make sure that you are just as intentional with it when it's your business and now you're having to unfortunately terminate an employee. Make sure that you're explicit, that employee or that associate should know exactly what's going on. And typically, when you're having to fire an employee, they generally know what's coming. If they don't, then shame on you as a leader. They should know kind of what's coming. It shouldn't be no surprise, right? If you're doing these I got you things, that's right. That's not going to last as a leader. You can't do that. All right. That'll get you caught up. That'll get you into some legalities. Make sure that you're just as intentional, and make sure that you provide people with the training, the onboarding. They're in the right role. So you're hiring people into the right role, even for your business. You can't just put Cousin Maybone there because Cousin Maybone like to drive and you go have him drive your truck, right? Is he in the right role for your company? Okay. So if he's not, then you got to make sure that he or she or whoever is in the right role. Same when you're with these corporations, these companies and things like that. Make sure that when you're hiring people, take your time, find the right candidate, go through the resumes, ask them scenario type of questions. So people who've worked with me, they know I use myself as an example a lot. Keeps me out of HR. And so I tend to ask a lot of scenario questions in interviews, and I use myself. So Tamika, we were talking about she was mentioning in the comment with sales. So if I'm interviewing a salesperson, I walk through a scenario. Okay. Tell me about a time when you made a sale run and you had to overcome objections. What were those objections? And then what did you do, or what did you say, or what did you demonstrate to be able to earn that sale? Now, that question is fairly pointed, but what it does is it allows that individual then to give you what you hope to be a real life scenario. Now, if they bullshitting you, you go figure that out real quick. Because if they just telling a story and just pulling it out of their ass, as you ask that question, they're not going to be able to just do that, right? They're going to stumble on something that's going to make you scratch your head. If it's true blue, they're going to go through it very easy, very fluidly, right? And they're going to give you the details along the way that's going to give you an insight into their mindset, into their thinking, into how they approach things to determine, again, are they the right fit at this time? So if you're doing those kind of things as a leader, y'all, and in management and whatnot, that helps you put people in the right position. Don't just ask folks where you want to see yourself in 5 years and all that kind of, them 100-year-old interview questions, right? And it's not to say that they're not appropriate at appropriate times, but you want to get into the mindset and the behavior. How have you handled yourself and how have you handled situations in the past? And a lot of times that's indicative of how you're going to do it in the future, because people tend to naturally revert back to their comfort level. So whatever, however you handle things is how it's going to be. So when you get to the point, if you do have to exit someone from your company, just make sure that they have been provided the tools and the training and whatnot. And at that point, whether they violated something or it's insubordination or manipulation, deceitful kind of approaches, that you're able to document that and you've got that ready to go. Again, the fact data to support. So hope that's able to help some of you all that are in business or thinking about being in business or whatnot. Ann Yates here on the Facebook Live, for those that are listening on the podcast, Ann Yates says, you know that the Grizzlies organization is very racist. They have a proven record of that so far. I'd love to see that record. I can't say whether I, agree or disagree, Ann. Obviously, this particular situation smells funny when you talk about with Coach Fizdale and the Grizzlies organization, considering it. And if you look at their record and their history with head coaches, so go back to Lionel Hollins, Coach Lionel Hollins. So they get rid of Lionel Hollins after they go to the Western Conference Finals and win, 56 games or something like that? Like the Grizzlies was on fire that year. All right. They end up getting to the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, they got swept by the Spurs, I think. And because of whatever beef with ownership or something about his contract or whatever, they let him go. All right. So then they bring in Dave Yeager for a few seasons. And then he gets sideways some kind of way with the organization. And then he leaves. And he's winning games. He's taking the team to the playoffs, at least in winning games. Now, they're not doing too much advancing at that point. They're kind of losing in the first round or whatnot. But they're getting there, including that one year where it seemed like everybody got hurt. And they kind of limped into the playoffs. And that playoff starting lineup was ridiculous. I mean, me and some of y'all could have played on in that playoff, some of them playoff games, right? And probably had the same result. But they were playing a bunch of no-name guys by the end of that year. So if you look at their history with head coaches, they tend to get rid of them all, even after they've had like levels of success. So it's hard to put a rhyme or reason to that without talking with them. Of course, I'd love to have one of them come on this podcast and kind of speak to it, but I'm not sure, dear. If they're very racist or not. I'd love to see some more evidence on that. Because if they are, then now that's a whole different conversation, is what I'm saying. So definitely thank you for your comment. Listen, so Julius, what's going on, brother? You're a good fam right there. Julius Harris joining on the I Really Mean It Show podcast. But thank y'all so much, for this opportunity getting on today. This podcast is really growing. I hope that it's providing you a level of value that you can take with you through your daily or weekly walk. And we're here every Friday, baby. Every Friday we do this thing. Thank y'all so much. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I want y'all to enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy this weekend. We're into December. How are you prepared to win in 2018? Are you ready? Okay, be just get your plan together now. Hopefully your plan's already starting to execute. Don't wait till January 1st. You can start 2018 right now. Where's your mindset at? All right. I'm RGB. This is the I Really Mean It Show podcast. Check out www.ireallymeanitpodcast.com where you can listen to all the shows and go back, you can interact, go to the Facebook page. I've got the Minding Your Business in Memphis group. And of course, you can hit me right here on Ron Brooks on my own personal profile. So I'm roll out. I got to get out, take care of some more business. But thank y'all so much. Peace.